What you see behind you is what you've seen on TV most every day in this past year, and it's what I'm up against in starting a car company today, and that is the doubt, the belief that it can't be done differently, or that whatever has been done can't be changed. And we know the images without even hearing the words that are coming out of people's mouths. And if you don't think that it's all at once sad and terrible and destructive of value, then you're probably not living in the same country that we're all sitting in right now. It cuts across boundaries. So I'm pretty sure that when Saul came to all of us and said, as storytellers, we'd like you to tell your story, that we all said, you know, you are definitely looking for innovators, and we agreed. As far as I heard, I think he was asking for the most deaf innovators, though. And I think that for me, I have trouble hearing. I have trouble hearing when people say, it's much like Michael said, when people tell you that something's improbable, it is likely that that may be something you want to take a closer look at. So Saul, I'm sorry if I misunderstood you and if I was just a deaf innovator, but I'd like to tell you my story. I promised you that I would, and I'm here to share it with everybody else. So it starts 10 years ago in 1999 when I joined the US Marines. I was an infantryman, and I was dropped into a war zone for the first time in my life. It's an experience that some of us here share, and some of us certainly have read a lot about. And I befriended a Shia Arab. His name was Safa. And Safa worked at the camp where I lived and patrolled out of. And I spent my days going out and patrolling the streets to get rid of bomb-riddled IED boxes that would sit quietly on the side of the road. And Safa spent his day working in our camp. And one day when Safa was coming to work, he was pulled over on the side of the road in his Chevy Caprice, and the 3 coworkers that he was with were shot in the face by some 2-bit thugs. They killed him, and they left him in the car to go to work with Safa, and to show that anybody who worked with the British, I was attached to a British unit at the time, was going to suffer the same fate. And they told Safa, they said, look, if you continue to work with these people, your family's going to be murdered, not just in a year, tomorrow or next week or whenever we decide to come by. And that's a problem. That's a real difficulty for people that are out there and have to make a choice in life. You have to make a choice as to whether you're going to connect with a different world, a choice as to whether you're going to stand for something that's different, something that is transcendent. And Safa did make a choice. He said, I have to stand up for my family, my people, my future, and he came to work the next day. One of the bravest men that I've ever met. And so I'm here to say that he's not the only one that's out there. I think that where we are today is Safa is a microcosm for connectedness, a microcosm for oil and the effect that it has on nations and the world. And I spend time on this because I think this conclusion is at the basis of why anybody would be crazy enough to start a car company. It would be probably no surprise to anybody in this audience today that transportation uses 71% of all imported and domestic oil in the United States. It's nice to have an audience that probably understands that very well. And the fact that cars and light trucks use almost all of that should be no surprise. And it's probably also not a surprise that 60% of what we import is basically the amount that we use in cars. 60% of our oil is what we import, and that's basically what we use in cars. So if we could cut our usage in cars in half, then we could cut what we import in half. And that would solve a lot of problems. If we could fix this giant car predicament, we would be able to rejuvenate our children's environment. We would be able to step forward and get security from 2-bit thugs, people who would shoot other people in the face. And we would be able to do things like grab energy independence. I don't need to spend a lot of time on it because it's something that's been covered by peers that are far more erudite than I am. I know how to build cars. Safa wasn't the only one that lost. I lost also. I carry the memory of 2 friends at a minimum who are very close to me who will never come home to see their sweethearts or their children again because they were fighting in a war in an oil-rich region that was torn by strife. So I never wanted to come home to my boys who are 1, 3, and 5 and tell them that I hadn't tried to do the most good in life. That's my story. And I wanted to have a little bit of fun while I was doing it. I was passionate about cars. And so I came back to this country and I said, I'm going to make a difference. And I said, what are the tools that I have together to do it? This was my grandfather. I was a slumdog chaiwala to this man. I learned everything there was about passion in cars. This guy owned the Indian Motorcycle Company for 12 years. It was hugely successful and then a failure. He was the person that crowdsourced a cure for rheumatic fever. and was told that it would be put him down in the grave. And he said, I can go out and raise money and make this happen. He wrote the first newsletter that I had ever seen in my life. This is him buying the Indian Motorcycle Company. This is the Rogers Roundup. 1940, he had a pure expense line on the line of his company that said, I'm going to connect with the world, make my employees, make my customers, and make my company famous across the world. But not only that, I'm going to ask for feedback. So they used to run quizzes in the Rogers Roundup. This is Newsletter 2.0 if you think we're doing Web 2.0 new, or if you think you're blogging. This was a guy who sat quietly in the back of the room and spent money to make sure that he was connected on the front lines. He was the true Mr. Rogers, if you will. And he stoked my fire for cars, and he gave me the curse. He gave me the curse of Preston Tucker, somebody who really wanted to do something for cars and said, damn the torpedoes, I'm going to make something happen. So I have a deep and undying love for cars. I have been in the recurring 12-step program since I was old enough to push a Matchbox car. My name is Jay Rogers, and I love cars. Hi, everybody. Thank you. I have the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change. But I'll be damned if we go into the 21st century and not take cars with us. I am personally ashamed that we, the leader of the industrial and internet revolutions, have left milquetoast cars as our legacy to yield the lowest average corporate fuel economy in the developed world. That is shameful. And I have a challenge. My challenge is that if we loved our cars, and if we were a little bit more intimate with them, that we would be able to rid ourselves of this disconnectedness of utilitarianism that's sort of taken over the field, and we may be able to make it to the other side of innovation. What I'm saying here, basically, is that cars have not come into the slow food revolution. Bobby Flay, Martha Stewart, Paula Deen, these people have done a lot for us. They've taken us into an era which is, you can do it, we can help. Lance Niebauer has taken a generation of airplane enthusiasts and said, you can drive in, build the plane, paint your Aztec warrior on the side, and then you can fly it home. It's an amazing thing. So we have cars as one of the great American pastimes. Read about Bill Buxton. He and I were just talking about the fact that he was inspired to get into the field that he is today because of his love for his brother's R69S 1971 Boxer BMW motorcycle. Hoorah! So I've come clean with some of my weaknesses. And I'd like to see some of yours. How many people here actually know how to fix something meaningful in their car today? Hands? Well, I guess it's less than the 40% that's been to a previous BIF. Automakers seem intent on keeping us out of the love for our cars. I mean, you can almost void the warranty in your car by opening up the hood and jump-starting the car in the wrong way, if the battery's even under the hood, for those of you that own a BMW. So, but loving cars is not a credential for starting a car company. For that, I sort of went into the wilderness, and it was nothing like a grand plan. I worked in China for 3 years. I had very much of the same experience that many people have that they've traveled. I didn't know what was going to happen. I worked with diabetics. 我会说中文说的一点儿. And so it was a good thing for me to learn and get out of cultures. I was an infantry Marine. I was a sniper. I learned combat leadership on the front lines. And I'm a chartered financial analyst, which is super boring. At least for me. And so I decided that I needed to make a choice, and I made a choice. I said, look, I'm going to start a car company, but I could do it two ways. I could either build a better mousetrap, I could build a better car, which would be really hard, and it costs $1 gazillion to do it, and so you need to make $1 gazillion cars to justify spending that $1 gazillion. Or you could take a less obvious approach, which is to build a better process for connecting with customers, a better process for connecting with innovation, and bringing it into your product, your end product, something that you sell to people. And to consistently make better cars. So that's what I did. And what I knew were a few things. I knew that if I moved fast and I made rapid decision-making in wartime, that I'd be better off than moving slow. And I wanted to be nimble. But how can you be nimble when you have to tool big? And how can you avoid tooling big when you need to have cars on lots to sell? And how can you avoid having cars on lots to sell if you have angry and impulsive Americans that want to come and buy a car when they have a pre-cleared check that they can go out and buy one with? So I said, I need to figure something out, and the thing I need to figure out is how do I keep people from being impulsive when it comes to cars? Dell did it. He said, I'm going to target second-time computer buyers, and I'm only going to sell them a computer with the technology that they want. Threadless, some of you know out there have done it by bringing in fashionistas to elevate the inconnu, and then say, look, if you can build a t-shirt, everybody's going to queue up for the design of the month. So I knew you had to make people wait, and we feel in our company that if you want to bring people to a solution, you can't shove their head in a car and say, you love this effing car. It's not going to work. You need involvement, You need commitment, and you need tension on the string. If you don't have tension on the string, there's no way you're going to pull somebody across the line. There's no way you're going to push them across the line. So our challenge to our customers is make cool cars. Make cool cars. I am unapologetic for a man who's been through a war, and why should I be anything else? If we want to solve the problems in the world, one of the ways we can do it is fix cars. And if we want to fix cars, then we got to build solutions that people deeply desire and want. And we need to cut through the BS in order to be able to get there. We need to make cool cars. Locol Motors started with a community. That's the first thing that we did. And today we have the largest online design and development community in the world. And if you think cool is corny, by the way, South Beach was corny in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. And we think cool is kind of kitschy cool as a word. So our community starts out cool, if you will. And we now have hundreds of factory visits. We're right here in the south coast of Massachusetts. So tonight, if you want to come by Locol Motors, you can do it. We're only an hour away. And we host design competitions that use prize-based innovation to come and bring people to our website. We have, in 1 year, 44,000 shared designs on our website of some of the coolest cars you've ever seen. And we have 3,600 innovators that come and talk about cars. If you want to talk about innovation, we like to talk about real products that get made and get delivered out. I have no problem with SaaS. I have no problem with software development in general. But I wanted to see if the Creative Commons license could be applied to things that had real marginal cost. And so we did it. And people say to me all the time, they say, look, you've been developing that car for 1.5 years with your community. When are you going to start marketing it? And I say, exactly. In our house, we have open source design and development, which in this audience, again, would not be something that would be a new thing to talk about. But just for a second, the so what here is as we run competitions, we get more meaningful gas pedals, we get more meaningful pocketbook holders, and we get more meaningful lights to stick on the roof. We get more meaningful cars. The bottom line is that we have proven that Creative Commons can work in a manufacturing concept, and we're just at the beginning of it. But don't get in our way, because we're going to steamroll you if you think it doesn't work. It's unsurprising to get the punchline that we believe we can, over time, deliver safer, more meaningful cars. That would be the advent of what's happened in software development that's been open source and other types of innovations like that. But the economic benefit, which is to me more interesting, is that we've liberated cars in many senses to be a platform for the specialty automotive equipment market, which is already a $38 billion a year annual market in this country alone. And that's based off of the most Byzantine cloistered network of data that is totally closed. If you opened it up, it could be $100 billion in 5 years in this market. So let's release the hounds is what we say. All car companies talk about ownership. They talk about having an experience, but few can stop you in your tracks. And that's what we've set out to do. The bottom line is if you want to connect with somebody in a pry it out of my hands over my cold, dead body kind of way, you need to have experience. You need to have an experience with a product across almost anything, whether it's art or technology or whether it's something that's in the built environment. And so the bottom line is we said, look, what's the reason why Harley paper, loan paper on a Harley bike performs better than a GM car? And the reason is because brands are about a promise. And when you make a promise to yourself and you have the experiences that are associated with that, it's our feeling that you tend to pay it off more quickly than one that you didn't care as much about. So our version of ownership is a first-of-a-kind interactive automotive retail environment. We build local microfactories, our first one here in Massachusetts, where you can come to our burgers, cars, and welding event, and you can learn, you can connect a little bit more with your car. So if you have any yen to want to find a love for something like that, we are your place to come. We don't mean something for everybody, but that is what we mean to our core audience. We allow people the opportunity to co-sell their approved products, to be able to bring and engage with designers ideas that would never before make it to market, and simply to get together and make friends you never knew you never had. So we begin that in the process of the birth of your car, and you build your car with us, much like Lancer. We promise to give meaning to your weekend again. We promise to provide or retain the bond in your family of doing something special. And we want to keep you engaged with something that's very grounded in your home life. That's the ownership experience that we have. And finally, there's local. When was the last time that you, being born in New York, Bruce, rooted for the Red Sox? Never, never. Yes, or if somebody said ever, they're really quiet out here. So the bottom line is the flash of the obvious from that pretty much shows to me that what's cool in Boston is not cool in New York. And that's the point. The point is that if you want to be fast, if you want to be right on point. You need to be from the street. You need to be local. And we're trying to solve a huge, slow problem of disconnectedness in the auto industry. And we need to jerk it out of its malaise, and we need to turn it into something which actually is made to listen. So our microfactories are designed that way. They are up in your face, they're in your community, and they have a feedback loop that can't be paralleled by something otherwise known today as a dealership. When was the last time you went into a dealership and said, my seatbelt kind of cuts me over the clavicle? Could you change that in the next car that I buy? That suggestion kind of goes in the waste bin of history, and it's nobody's individual fault. It's the fault of the process. So Locol Motors challenges the culture of centralized manufacturing, and I know I'm going to have a lot of conversations before these 2 days are over about what do you do about mass economies of scale. So I'm going to leave that for those conversations, but share a little bit more with you. We challenge the culture of embattled dealerships that are so disconnected from manufacturing, and we challenge the culture of dispersed service locations. We do it all in the same place. We manufacture, sell, and service out of a microfactory. So we introduce our cars by building these units, and our microfactories are designed to provide a lot of things. They provide local jobs, they provide a tight customer feedback loop, and they provide credible end-of-life recycling and reuse of components and materials that we've seen in the likes of HP today, but why haven't we seen it in cars? Well, that's something we think is possible. But you gotta have a local presence in order to be able to do that. HP doesn't sell cartridges back to China or India or California even to refill them and put them in a Staples in downtown Brockton. They simply send it back to a distribution warehouse that's here, refill it with ink, and then turn it back in. And there are other businesses that do this same sort of thing. So the outcome of Locol Motors is we make cool cars. We make them 5 times faster than the average car business. We make them 100 times less capital intensive. And that basically puts us in a cash conversion cycle that is the envy of a business like Dell or Build-A-Bear. Maxine Clark, by the way, is one of my idols. So the proof is in the doing. This is what our community delivers every day at Locol Motors. Great design, meant to be had for people to enjoy. 18 months ago, our community told us that the region was the desert Southwest, and that together with them, we could design a car and bring it. 16 months later, and $2 million of capital development cost less later, we are going to bring the Rally Fighter to the market in Las Vegas in 3 weeks. Come and see it. We've already taken 22 orders for this car. It's American-born, it's process-savvy, and it's the Rally Fighter. This multiplied across 35 markets in this country alone, and we believe there's great international ability to put microfactories in other places, may only bring 70,000 advanced cars to the market at a time. But I hope you'll agree with me that that's a tipping point that is the fulfillment of a promise to get us out of our comfort zone. So my challenge is, let's get connected. Let's make a product that we personally can invest in. Let's show the world that innovation can happen in things that are outside of the world of software and can now be in manufacturing also, and that Silicon Valley is not the only address where disruptive innovators live. Let's make cool cars. Thank you.